The sun hadn't yet burned off the tired gray of morning, but the city was already moving, honking, shouting, grinding. The scent of roasted maize mixed with the staleness of yesterday's sweat. That was the perfume of the streets for men like him. Not perfume at all, but proof that he was still in the land of the surviving, not the living. His name was Philip, and he had been surviving for 3 years. He wore the same faded button-up shirt he'd ironed on his lap that morning, using a borrowed extension cord in front of a roadside kiosk. His CV had once made people nod. A first-class graduate in accounting. Solid internship record. Good references. But after hundreds of applications and silence that echoed louder than rejection, Philip had stopped believing in qualifications. These days, he sold cold sachet water and snacks near a busy junction, just to eat and send something back home. His hustle spot was next to a traffic light that didn't always work. He'd learned to read faces, who looked kind, who would wind down for a sachet, who would pretend not to see him. Some days, he sold enough to eat fried rice with egg. Most days, it was just gari and groundnut. That morning was quiet. Too quiet. The sun was out, but the traffic was light. He squatted under the shade of a billboard when he heard the distant sound of a car sputtering, then stopping. Across the street, a black SUV had rolled to a halt at an awkward angle. The driver, an older man in a crisp white kaftan, stepped out. He looked frustrated. He opened the hood, poked around, then stared helplessly at the engine like it had personally betrayed him. Philip watched. He could have ignored it. It wasn't his business. Plenty of big men broke down every day. But something tugged at him. Maybe it was the fact that no one else even looked in the man's direction. Everyone walked past him like wealth was immune to inconvenience. Philip crossed the street. "Good morning, sir. You need help?" The man looked at him, surprised, then cautious. "Do you know anything about engines?" "Small. I've fixed my uncle's taxi before. It turned out to be a loose battery terminal." Philip tightened it with a coin and a bit of folded sachet rubber. The engine roared back to life. The man looked at him like he was seeing something else now. Not just a sweaty street hawker, but someone useful. "What's your name?" he asked. "Philip." The man nodded, got into his SUV, and drove off with a small wave. No money, no card, no dramatic, "I'll change your life" speech. Philip returned to his corner. But life, quietly, had just turned. For the next 2 weeks, life returned to what Philip knew best. The ritual of near invisibility. Wake before sunrise. Clean himself at the public bathhouse with bucket water. Iron his shirt the way street boys did, by pressing it under a cement block to look crisp. Sell sachet water at the intersection till dusk. Try not to be swallowed by the ache of wasted potential. The encounter with the SUV man became a blur, like one of those strange half-dreams your mind creates just to trick you into hope. Philip didn't talk about it. What was there to say? The man didn't take his number, didn't promise anything. People like to be helped. That didn't mean they owed you a future. But somewhere inside him, the memory lingered like the scent of expensive cologne that stayed in the air after someone left. Then one late afternoon, something strange happened. A silver Toyota stopped right in front of his corner. A man stepped out, well-dressed, balding, with thick glasses. He scanned the sachet boys, then looked directly at Philip. "Are you Philip?" Philip blinked, cautious. "Yes, sir." The man didn't smile. "You're needed. Please come." "Sorry, needed where?" "At the Carter Group headquarters. Mr. Timothy Carter sent me." Philip froze. He didn't even remember the old man's name until now. "Mr. Carter?" The man with the SUV? He stared for a second, as if waiting for someone to jump out and shout prank. But no one came. The man added. He said, "Bring me the boy who didn't walk away." Philip stood still. The sachet water bag slipped from his hand and burst at his feet. 30 minutes later, Philip stood in a vast glass building that smelled of money, polish, and air conditioning. Everyone moved with a purpose, and he felt like a stain in a museum, out of place and watched too closely. But he kept his shoulders up. He wasn't begging. He was invited. He was led into an office so large it felt like a hotel lobby. There, behind a minimalist desk, sat the same man he'd helped that morning 2 weeks ago. Except now, in an elegant navy suit, he looked even more powerful, more unreachable. But he stood when Philip entered. "Philip," he said, "I remember your face. And I remember your hands. Philip said nothing. The man continued. In a city full of people too busy to care, you helped a stranger without asking for anything. That tells me more about you than any CV ever could. He gestured to his seat. Now tell me who you are, and what you were meant to be. Philip sat down, and for the first time in years, he allowed himself to speak like a man who still believed in his future. Philip sat upright in the leather chair, suddenly aware of the sweat spreading under his shirt. The room was too cold for it, but it wasn't the temperature. It was the weight of being seen. Mr. Carter leaned forward. His voice had the calm authority of someone who is used to giving people their destinies, or denying them. Tell me, he said, what did you study? Accounting, sir. Where? City State University. Class. First class. That made the old man raise an eyebrow. He didn't say, I'm impressed. He didn't need to. Let me guess, Carter said, tapping a pen between his fingers. No connections. No uncle in banking. No cousin in government. Philip gave a small, almost guilty smile. No one, sir. No one except you. Philip looked up. You didn't walk away. That told me something no degree can. And let me be clear. Mr. Carter leaned back in his chair, hands steepled. I've built empires. I've seen people with more papers than sense. You've got something else. Philip swallowed hard, but said nothing. He didn't want to ruin the moment by speaking too soon, like a hungry man grabbing the plate before it's fully served. Mr. Carter continued. I've asked HR to create a 6-month junior trainee role for you in our finance division. You'll start next week. Philip blinked. Sir, you heard me. You'll learn. You'll learn. And if you prove you're what I think you are, we'll make it permanent. For a second, Philip felt the air leave his lungs. This wasn't one of those fairy tales from a WhatsApp voice note. This was real, in front of him. Given, not begged for. Mr. Carter stood and reached out a hand. Don't thank me. You earned it long before you walked over to that SUV. Philip stood slowly and took his hand, firm and unsure all at once. Just one thing, Mr. Carter added, pausing before he sat back down. Remember how it felt to be where you were, so you don't forget how to treat the next person standing there. Philip nodded, voice low but sure. Yes, sir. I won't forget. Outside the building, the city looked the same. Impatient cars, shouting hawkers, dust on the sidewalk. But to Philip, everything had changed. The world had cracked open, and a door had appeared. This time, he wasn't just surviving. He was beginning. Philip arrived at the Carter Group's finance division the next Monday, wearing his only good shirt and the best pair of trousers he owned, still threadbare, but ironed so sharply it looked new in dim light. He had spent the weekend washing it, praying over it, and pacing like someone about to meet destiny. The building still intimidated him. Marble floors, fingerprint access doors, and people who walked like the ground belonged to them. He greeted the receptionist too formally, bowed too deeply to the security guard, and sat too stiffly in the waiting area. But it didn't matter. He was there. At 8:01 a.m., he was escorted to his desk. The finance floor smelled of expensive toner and polished air. Computers blinked silently. The other interns were sharply dressed and sharp-tongued, whispering about vacations and post-grad scholarships. Philip sat at a small corner desk with a used laptop and an empty notepad. He felt like a shadow in a place full of spotlight. But he worked, quietly, relentlessly. While others chatted in groups, Philip studied spreadsheets, memorized templates, watched the way his supervisor double-checked figures, and asked intelligent questions only when necessary. He stayed late, came early, and made no excuses for not knowing, only efforts to learn. In week 3, a financial report for a major client went wrong. A decimal error had misplaced nearly 200,000 Ghanaian cedis. The panic buzzed through the office like a virus. Philip, going through the figures alone after hours, spotted it. A minus instead of a plus in a key formula. He corrected it, printed the updated sheet, and quietly slid it onto his supervisor's desk with a sticky note. Found this. Hope it helps. Philip. The next morning, the head of finance called him in. We checked your correction. You saved a $1 million CD relationship. Good eye. He nodded, heart racing. You're not just smart. You pay attention. People like that rise fast. That Friday, Mr. Carter himself stopped by the finance floor. Everyone straightened like rulers. Philip stood too, unsure if he should speak. But Carter walked straight to him, nodded once, and said, "I hear you're already proving me right." It wasn't a speech. It wasn't applause. But it was enough. That night, Philip didn't return to the streets. He used part of his first stipend to rent a small single room near the outskirts. No mattress yet. But he lay on the floor that night with his hands behind his head, smiling up at the dark ceiling. He had come too far to sleep bitter again. By the end of the 4th month, Philip had stopped counting his hours and started trusting his rhythm. He knew the shortcuts through spreadsheets. He understood how Mr. Carter's financial empire moved. Quiet, fast, and unforgiving of laziness. He was no longer the forgotten graduate in a crowd of hawkers. He was now the intern whose name the CFO remembered during meetings. But he didn't brag. He couldn't, because every time he looked at his desk, he remembered the cracked junction where he once stood, selling sachet water to uninterested faces. One Thursday afternoon, Philip was called upstairs. Not just upstairs. Top floor. The kind of floor with heavy wooden doors and carpets thick enough to silence your footsteps. He was nervous. He knocked. "Come in." Mr. Carter sat behind his desk, reading a document, pen in hand. He didn't look up. "Sit." Philip obeyed. There was a silence. Not awkward, but weighty. Then Carter finally looked up. "I've been watching." Philip sat straighter, unsure whether that meant reward or warning. "You've done well, Philip. Not just in performance, but in spirit." He folded the document in front of him. "I brought you in because of something simple. You helped a stranger. That's rare. But keeping you here is not charity. It's strategy. You have a good head, but more importantly, a clean heart." Philip opened his mouth, then closed it again. Mr. Carter slid a slim white envelope across the desk. Philip took it, unsure. Inside was an employment contract, full-time, junior financial analyst. Salary enough to rent a decent apartment, send money home, and still save. "I won't insult you with a speech," Carter said. "But you need to know this. I wasn't always rich. 35 years ago, I was barefoot in Bolgatanga, sweeping an old man's shop for coins. One day, I helped him when he fainted. He gave me my first job. That's how it started." He leaned back. "This city forgets the quiet helpers." "I don't." Philip swallowed, blinking hard. "I don't know what to say," he managed. "Say nothing. Just remember where you came from. And one day, when you're the one in the seat, notice the boy who didn't walk away." Philip nodded slowly. "I will." That night, as the sun dipped into the edges of the city and the roads filled with the usual angry horns and dust, Philip walked home. But this time, he didn't walk like a hustler. He walked like a man who had been seen, and who now knew how to see others. 2 years passed. The city didn't slow down. It never did. But Philip had learned how to move within it. Not as a ghost on the sidewalk, but as a man with presence. His name was now printed on reports. His voice was listened to in meetings. He still didn't dress loud or speak too much, but when he spoke, people paused. He'd moved into a modest but clean apartment, bought a second-hand car, sent his sister to nursing school. His mother's voice over the phone sounded less worried these days. But none of that was what made him proudest. What did was what he started quietly on weekends, mentoring unemployed graduates. No noise, no NGO banners. Just him and a few plastic chairs under a mango tree at a church compound. He taught them how to write honest CVs, how to speak in interviews, and how to stay hopeful in a city that sometimes punished you for dreaming. He called it the First Step Project. One Saturday afternoon, after wrapping up a session, he was walking toward his car when he saw a boy, thin, dusty, standing awkwardly by the road, holding a leaking cooler of peeled oranges. Something in the boy's face, maybe the fatigue, maybe the quiet watching, made Philip stop. "You all right?" he asked. The boy hesitated. "Yes, just waiting for traffic to slow so I can cross." Philip smiled. "Need help?" The boy nodded, surprised. Philip took the cooler from him without waiting, and together they crossed the road. At the other side, the boy looked up at him, eyes wide. "Thank you, sir." Philip paused. He saw himself in that boy. He reached into his wallet, pulled out a business card, and handed it to him. "If you're ever ready for something different, call me." The boy took it like it was something sacred. As Philip walked back to his car, he smiled faintly. He hadn't saved the world, but he had noticed, just like someone once noticed him. A single act of kindness, especially when no one is watching, can change the direction of your life. And one day, it might be your turn to be the stranger who doesn't walk away. Even when the world forgets the quiet ones, destiny remembers. Sometimes, the smallest moment holds the key to a door you never knew existed.